Hello, my name is Berndnaut Smilde. I'm a visual artist. I'm based in Amsterdam. And my work consists of installations, sculptures, and photographs. And amongst other things, I make clouds inside spaces. This cloud was shot with a high-speed camera, resulting in a slow-motion video at about 10 times slower than the usual time. And as these clouds grow and change shape, I was interested to see how they would change shape and reflect light, and therefore I made this video. But as these grow and fall apart at the same time, the best way of capturing is actually through a photograph. So the idea of a cloud inside a space is best captured for me through a still image. And I'm going to show you some of my Nimbus works. I see the Nimbus works as temporary sculptures, and they exist of almost nothing. They're balancing on the edge of materiality, you could say. And, well, they could be a sign of misfortune or an element from a classical painting, but they only exist for a couple of seconds before they fall apart again. And although the physical aspect is really important, but in the end, a photograph is all that remains, and that is the actual artwork. So it's a document of something that happened on a specific location and is gone afterwards again. And my very first cloud I made in a miniature space. It was about the size of a quarter of a real-size space. And you can see here, you can tell by the large droplets on the floor. A model space allows you to create works that are unthinkable in real life. So I transformed the idea of this model into my perception of an ideal museum space and wanted to see if I could exhibit a rain cloud. And I had this idea of walking into a museum like where where you expect to find landscape paintings and seascape paintings with skies and clouds, but there was nothing there. It was all empty, except for a cloud hovering in the corner of a room. So it was almost like an image of total disappointment, you could say, and that cloud could just, well, rain on you. But this turned out pretty well, and well, I like the fleeting aspect of the cloud, and so I started working in real-size spaces. So I make the clouds with smoke, water, and backlighting, and I adjust the space when necessary. In this case, I put blue film on the windows to create a different atmosphere. And so what happens is that the water particles, they stick to the smoke and they make it heavier, and they keep the cloud together long enough to be photographed. But making a cloud is always determined to fail. But for a short moment, you transport the idea and start making new connections. So for me, the work is really about the idea of a cloud inside a space and what we project onto it. The spaces, you could see as a plinth for the work, and they also provide a scenario. The spaces are all used as exhibition spaces, and therefore also relate to the artwork, but also to the history and tradition of a space. And this was shot in a castle in Belgium, which is empty most of the time, but once a year it's open for an exhibition. But till the 70s, it's also been used as a mental institution, and you can tell by the different architectural features that it's not original. But for me, it contributes to the to the filmic character of the work. Here you can see what different layers of air do. So in the top part, there's warm air, and below it's cool. And it stretches the cloud, almost like a weather phenomenon. And the strings you see underneath the cloud, that's what the water does, so it pours it down. And this cloud actually stayed quite a bit. But every space works totally different, and also every space creates a new context to the work. And here, well, there's an important reference between the inside and the outside. This was in Rome, part of a museum. It was not an exhibition space, but actually it was a kind of storage space, a space which was not open to the public. And I liked it very much. It was used for storing statues and sarcophagi and all kinds of stuff that was at least 2,000 years old. Also the architecture of the space is 2,000 years old. And I liked this idea of time, of that fleeting cloud versus that sense of time. And also for me, the materiality in the photo is really important. So that fluffy cloud versus the stone and the metal and the wood, that's all in the image. Architecture plays an important role in my series. And in a way, you could say that I'm chasing representations of an ideal space. And maybe the clouds are a way for me of finding out what a space is. You could ask yourself, who is showing who? Which is more important? Is the cloud showing the space or the space showing the cloud? And are we looking at nature? Well, the cloud is man-made in a room for exposing culture, so it's turning into culture right away. So there's a transition in the work where the cloud moves from nature into culture, and from an appearance into a representation, from a physical fact into an image, and from presence into absence. So there's also lots of oppositions in the work that I really like. And even in relation to the space, you could say that the cloud is maybe that one uncontrollable aspect in relation to the order and structure of a room. This was my first outdoor project. I was reacting on the ancient landscape in the Pilbara in Australia. And this is one of the oldest crusts of Earth on the planet. And I wanted to add something fleeting, but also something artificial to this, well, great sense of time and nature that was there. Driving around, I also got very, I was very intrigued by the minimal landscape, just the red dirt and the blue sky. And it reminded me of the very first cloud I made in a model space, so the red and the blue room. And I'm really fond of this image because it shows the essence of that location. And that is that you see the light reflecting in the red dirt, and it's coloring the clouds in the bottom. And that's really specific, very typical for that surrounding there. And it reminds me of the Dutch light we have in the Netherlands. The typical Dutch light, as also discussed in many old classic paintings, is the light that we have that, well, reflects on the many waters in the Netherlands and then bounces back versus the clouds and the haze that's in the air. This is a behind-the-scenes shot of making clouds. Although all the works look very calm and peaceful, working out there is something else. So you have to bring water, you have to bring power. And imagine starting a generator at 5 in the morning in one of those gorges, going like, bam, 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 bam. That's really, really brutal versus that image that you actually get. The last example I want to show you is an installation I made for the Armory show last year. And it's actually my first build space. So it's a set, it's a corner of a room, an ideal frame. And outside this frame, you can see where a space begins and a space ends. And this installation runs fully automatically. It produces a cloud every 50 minutes. So it was totally out of my control. There's a video here. So after an amount of time, there's a light popping up, and then there is then a short shower of a couple of seconds to moisten the air. Then a burst of smoke that pops into a small cloud. And depending on the air circulation in that room, that cloud moves wherever it wants to go. So one day it will go into the direction of the restaurant there, and the next day it will move into a gallerist booth. And I had no control. But other than my other works, it's the viewer here that selects the frame and takes the actual image, takes the photograph. And after that cloud slowly disappears again, the set is empty again for another 50 minutes. So you could have easily missed it. And it's all about the moment, about being at the right place at the right time. And it is through a photograph that we kind of relive that moment in our minds again, making the cloud more important in its absence than its presence. Thank you.